You understand that sex is a creative force. You've heard of transmutation. You've felt what happens when you hold back for days, weeks, yearning for more focus, more magnetism, more presence, but deep down, something pulls you back to collapse, to relapse, to the old cycle. And each time you start again, the shame grows. How can someone who has seen the light still choose the shadow? You try to control your habits, create routines, block apps, avoid triggers. But the problem isn't in your actions, but in how your mind was created, conditioned to associate pleasure with distraction, desire with dopamine, excitement with escape. As long as the subconscious remains sexualized, no external technique will suffice. Jung said that what we deny in ourselves becomes destiny, and what you have denied is that your mind still serves instinct and not the soul. You are not just fighting carnal desire. You are fighting ancient programming reinforced by algorithm, by culture, by religious guilt and repressed shame. Your brain has been trained to associate women with escape, the body with liberation, sex with self-affirmation. No need for additional motivational videos. It requires a profound archetypal reprogramming. I also thought that holding on to the instinct that makes resistance strong was enough. But I discovered that holding back without transforming is like lighting a fire and leaving it locked in a dark room. It consumes you from the inside out. It wasn't until I understood that I had to integrate desire, recognize its symbolic nature, and consciously redirect it that everything changed. I stopped running away and started leading. This force is wielded like a king wields his sword. Today I invite you on a second journey. The first was to resist. The second is to dominate. And dominating does not mean controlling. It is about deeply understanding the origin of the impulse and transforming it into true spiritual and psychic power. In this video, you will learn how Carl Jung deciphered the mechanisms of the desire-dominated mind. You will understand the archetypes that still sabotage you. You will discover the formula that frees the libido from the prison of the flesh and elevates it to the throne of the soul. You have already begun this journey. It is time to cross the bridge, and on the other side lies the desexualized mind. You begin to realize something is wrong. Not within yourself, but in a subtle discomfort. Like a buzzing only you hear. It's a restlessness that doesn't go away, even after pleasure. Even after all your urges have been satisfied. It's as if there's a void. A silent void that repeats itself every time you surrender to the promise of relief. And this void has a name: separation. They said that what you resist persists. But what if you no longer resist it? What if you give in to the repetition of habits that you know are draining you? But you can't stop. The conditioned mind seeks pleasure to avoid discomfort. But the body, to be more honest, starts screaming insomnia, apathy, lack of motivation, anxiety for no apparent reason, a fatigue that's not physical but existential. These symptoms aren't accidental. They're the language of an imbalanced energy system. At this point in your journey, you feel drained, but you don't yet know what's draining you. You may have heard that sexual energy is the most powerful force in existence, but now you're beginning. Don't think of this as an esoteric theory, but as the harsh reality. You will find that every time this energy dissipates unconsciously, it not only disappears but fragments you. You wake up, but you don't wake up. You work, but you don't thrive. You connect with others, but you don't connect. And in this labyrinth of stimuli, the mind pushes you again and again into the same cycle of desire, gratification, and emptiness, a cycle that the modern world keeps trapped. It doesn't want you to think about it. It offers you a quick dose of dopamine at the click of a button. It wants you to normalize what it's abnormal to feel weak and yet believe it's freedom, but something within oneself begins to react. This is when the true hero's journey begins, when one realizes that one is asleep inside. One feels the need to break this vicious cycle, but one doesn't know how. The old methods no longer work. Praying, distracting oneself, repressing, all of this only masks the problem. Because what needs to change is not just behavior, but identity. Jung teaches us that true transformation occurs when the shadow is integrated and present. Precisely this uncontrollable desire, this silent compulsion that feeds on your weakness. You're not fighting sex. You're fighting the way your mind has learned to manage it. This energy is neutral. The problem lies in its unconscious use, And that's when the hero in you begins to awaken, not with brute force but with clarity. You begin to realize that every time you give in to an automatic impulse, you are surrendering your power to something outside. You were not born to live a slave to your own will. I wish you were born to dominate your inner kingdom, but since the answer lies in awareness, in the beginning of recovery, in simply observing without judging, without feeling, without running away, choosing with presence, it's small, but it's the beginning. And then the energy begins to shift direction. You don't need to understand everything now, but you do need to start moving forward, because this inner calling you feel, this quiet unease, is not weakness. It's the first sign that your soul wants to take back control. You begin to ask yourself, what if this were true? What if a latent power in me that is just waiting for me to stop wasting it? And if the desexualization of the mind is really the beginning of the reintegration of my essence? These questions still have no answer, but they take you out of automatism, and that is already a first sacred step. Have you noticed that desire never asks permission to enter, does not knock on the door, enters? Like a silent thief, takes control of your mind, distorts your vision, and transforms your will into slavery. Jung would say that what you are not aware of controls you, and that this has never been more true than in the realm of sexuality. Modern man is no longer a warrior. He has become a spectator. He watches his mind being shaped by images he did not choose, by desires he does not understand, and by impulses that distance him from his essence. Sexual desire, the life force that should animate your creation, your art, your legacy, has been hijacked. This hijacking was so subtle that you didn't even notice it. Desire is not the problem. The problem is when it ceases to be an ally and becomes a dictator. When we feel incapable, you can focus because something is pulling you out of your flow. When you try to meditate, but the image of that woman returns when you want to produce something, but your energy has already poured into rootless, sterile, and meaningless places. This is the invisible enemy. Uncontrolled, intoxicated, automated desire. Jung would call this shadow possession. An unconscious archetype takes control and lives in your place. You think you're in charge, but you're just a puppet of a misunderstood ancestral script. When sexual energy is dissociate consciousness, it becomes destructive, not because it is bad, but because it lacks direction. Imagine your command center, an inner throne where your inner king resides, the one who makes the decisions, who rules the nation of your being. Now imagine that throne empty, or worse, occupied by a servant who thinks he is the king. Desire without consciousness is that servant. It rules in the name of lack, fear, compensation. But here is the secret few reveal. Desire can be trained. It doesn't need to be neutralized. It must be integrated. Jung, this shows us that the path to individuation involves integrating the shadow. This means looking directly at what one desires and asking why, who, and for what purpose. At this point, the hero of the journey awakens. He understands that the dragon he must vanquish is not external, but internal, and that this dragon actually guards a treasure. This treasure is transmuted energy. By holding back, one doesn't simply avoid an action. One preserves a spark. One reforges the sword that cuts through illusions. One fuels the fire of discrimination. But beware, unconscious repression becomes repression, and the repressed returns with increased force. Jung warned us that whatever you repress in the unconscious manifests itself in life as an inevitability. In other words, the images you suppress will haunt you. Therefore, the first step is not to cling, but to observe. Observe your patterns. What turns you on? When and at what moments you feel vulnerable? What triggers the cycle of self-awareness marks the beginning of liberation. And contrary to popular belief, true masculinity does not fear self-confrontation. It thrives on it. Desexualizing the mind doesn't kill desire, but it frees it from the prison of compulsion, returns it to the temple of creation, and gives you back the power of choice. You were not created to serve algorithms, but to dominate your own soul. And the desexualized mind is where that domination begins. Have you noticed how the ancients tamed fire? They didn't extinguish it. They avoided it, observed it, and fed it with precision. For they knew that uncontrolled fire devours. But the same tamed fire warms, illuminates, and protects. Carl Jung said, "What we reject remains, but what we consciously observe is transformed." And when it comes to sexual energy, the most common mistake is not feeling it, but not knowing what to do with it. Men who aspire to a desexualized mind often believe they must repress, cut off their impulses and live like monks, disconnected from the world. But this is a mistake because repression does not liberate. It implodes. What Jung proposes is not the castration of energy, but its channeling. It is not about extinguishing the fire, but about learning to transform it into a sacred flame. Sexual transmutation begins with a silent pact with your soul. I will never betray myself again. That's the whole point. Every time you indulge in pornography, impulsive masturbation, or uncontrollable desires, you're not just giving yourself pleasure, you're weakening your inner warrior. You're telling yourself, I can't handle this. Then your subconscious notices. But what if it were different? What if every impulse reminded you that you have energy within you, ready to expand in another direction? Jung understood that the libido is that force. What drives desire is the same as what drives creation: intellect, art, mission. The great shift begins when you ask yourself different questions. Where do I direct this energy? What can I build? How can I channel it into something greater? Imagine you are the architect of your own soul. Every restriction becomes a pillar. Every thought becomes cement. The desexualized mind is not cold. It is creative. It is not rigid. It is free. You must understand this. Sexuality is the most fundamental language of the human being, a power that can express itself on multiple levels. The problem has never been desire, but its enslavement. The addicted mind seeks instant orgasm. The awakened mind seeks the lasting ecstasy of construction. And then, something profound happens in the imagination. When your mind is trapped by sexual patterns, your imagination weakens. You begin to depend on external stimuli, preconceived images, sounds, and fantasies. But when you restrain them, when you sublimate them, you begin to see again. You dream more clearly. You visualize with more power. It is as if the soul uses the lenses of inner vision. The desexualized mind is fertile. It does not dry up because when desire is not exhausted in addiction, it becomes a creative impulse. We feel more desire to live, more connection with the body, more intensity in the little things. The energy returns to its center. The gaze becomes deeper, the presence is stronger. Think about it. True power never makes noise. It is silent like a burning ember. The man who has transformed his energy has nothing to prove, enters an environment, and the vibration changes. There is something in him that cannot be bought. It cannot be faked, and it doesn't go away. Have you ever seen a man like that? And maybe deep down you feel like you can become one, but you have to decide to cut the invisible threads that bind you to the cycle of instant gratification. You have to look in the mirror and see more than just a body. From now on, see the purpose. When you feel the need to stop, to breathe, to feel, ask yourself, what can I do with this energy? Write, exercise, create, pray, walk, talk, play an instrument, meditate. Any action that reconnects you to the present is an act of transmutation. Carl Jung didn't want you to leave. He wanted you to face life with courage. And sexuality is a part of it. But what you do with it defines who you will become. You either let yourself be guided by your strength, or you become its slave. The question is no longer how to stop feeling desire. The question is, what to do with this divine power within me. At some point in your life, you felt you were losing something. It wasn't money, time, or even pleasure. It was your inner peace. That's why we're not here to fight sex, but to restore the sacred. For when desire takes over, the mind is not content to be mere desire. It wants to be the center of the temple, and the temple is your mind. Carl Jung said that whoever looks outward dreams, whoever looks inward awakens, and perhaps your awakening begins with a small gesture of silence. Because where there is too much noise, there is no listening. Where there is overstimulation, there is no intuition. Where sexual fantasies are constant, there is no space to listen to the soul. And the soul, believe me, always whispers before it screams. Have you ever noticed that great moments of lucidity come when you remain silent? On a solitary walk, a long morning swim with no notifications, in that void the truth emerges. But the modern world hates silence, and you know why. In silence, you begin to remember who you are. Sexual desire manipulated becomes noise. It fills your mental space with images, sounds, and distractions, not out of weakness, but because you've been conditioned to accept it as normal, which it isn't. Your mind is a temple. a space of power where you build harmony. But if you feed it digital garbage, comparisons, pornography, cheap fantasies, you let the altar become a stage, and in this stage, you are not the protagonist, you are manipulated. Jung knew that the subconscious feeds on symbols. Every image you consume becomes embedded in layers that you don't even notice, and when these images are loaded with artificial eroticization, you begin to act without realizing it. Your thought patterns, your relationships, your view of the other, everything is affected. But here is the point: the desexualization of the mind is not a process of denial. It is a symbolic purification process, which means that you must make your mind a clean, sublime and fertile place. You must reintroduce the sacred. Start with your attention. Observe what you feed your mind with in the early hours of the morning, what images you let in, what sounds shape your thinking, what words build your inner world. If you want to control the mind, start with what you let in through your eyes and ears. Protect your attention as if it were gold, because it is. Every minute you sacrifice for something that doesn't deserve your greatness is a stone torn from your temple. And that's where discipline comes in, a spiritual routine. Whatever your beliefs, you need practices that connect you to something greater than desire. Meditation, reading, prayer, writing, silence. Discipline is the guardian of the temple. Many mistake this for rigidity, but it's quite the opposite. By organizing yourself internally, you free yourself externally. By saying no to what diminishes you, you say yes to what elevates you. You stop groveling like a slave to the senses. Begin walking as a warrior of the mind, and don't be fooled. When faced with temptation, your mind will try to bargain with you. One video, one look, one time. But each concession is a crack in the altar, and a cracked temple will one day collapse. So write, my mind is the temple. I decide what is placed there. I am the keeper of my altar. Make this mantra your anchor in moments of distraction, for you are not just seeking to unsee certain things, but to consciously decide what kind of man you want to be. And this man who protects his mind is exceptional, yet authentic. This is the man who listens to his inner voice when everyone else is shouting. This is the man who walks upright when everyone else is chasing vain pleasures. This is the man who builds something invisible from the outside, but indestructible from the inside. And it all begins where few have the courage to look into the mind. There at the center of the temple, the flame waits. It's not the obvious addiction that's getting you down, but the subtle desire disguised as freedom of choice, only today. It's that invisible enemy that sabotages even the most awakened man. You may have been clean for weeks, hidden all traces, blocked all websites, changed your habits, but something inside you whispers that you've already won. One misstep won't destabilize you. It will catch up with you. Jung warned us, the shadow doesn't disappear, it hides. Learn to speak your language, to put on the clothes of your new self. It's not explicit pornography. It's an innocent video, an artistic image, a glance at social media that seems involuntary, but awakens something ancient within you. This is the deepest trap. When desire becomes a ghost that lives in a corner of your mind, waiting for you to let your guard down. And here's the hard truth. You're never completely safe. The mind, however trained, always carries old seeds, and if you don't keep watering the new, seeds that respond to the presence of the uplifting power, the weeds grow back. But then the more important question arises. How do you defeat an enemy that already lives within you? Jung said you have to know it. You have to identify the demon. You have to observe what fuels it and what feeds the subtle desire, the unmet emotional need. You don't just feel physical desire. You feel a lack of connection, the recognition of love. Subtle desire steals these emotions and promises to fill them with immediate pleasure, but it leaves a void, the absence of purpose. Real, when you don't know where you're going, every distraction seems like a path. Subtle desire takes you away from your mission because it knows it loses its power when you align with your purpose. Spiritual boredom, when you stop seeking the sacred, the profane calls you back. The mind that doesn't mind the heights plunges into the depths. That's why you don't need motivation now, but inner vigilance. Vigilance is the shield of the initiate. It's the ability to observe what attracts you before it consumes you. It's the act of stepping back in the overcome the temptation and say, I know who is speaking, and it is not me. It is my shadow. This alertness comes not from external techniques, but from the decision to stop living like a slave, and this is where the true alchemy of the mind begins. Transforming subtle desire is a spiritual act. It is about recognizing the fire within you and redirecting it. When you feel the impulse, don't fight it brutally. Observe it, breathe with it. Ask yourself, what are you trying to tell me? Most of the time, this reveals a deeper need. Belonging must be perceived. The repressed must be expressed. It must be reacted to consciously, not escaped. Jung said, "One does not become illuminated by imagining figures of light, but by becoming aware of darkness." Your task is no longer to extinguish desire, but to integrate it. When you see the shadow and recognize it, it no longer controls you. When you see desire and understand its source, it becomes your ally. And if you follow its impulse without yielding, you deserve an invisible medal, a sign that only warriors of the spirit wear, the sign of the choice of self-control to regain greatness, because on this path no one will rejoice. No one will see your inner struggle, but the results will shine like armor in your posture, your clarity, your energy. The desexualized mind is not an empty mind, but a mind filled with meaning, and you are getting closer to conquering this territory. Have you ever felt as if your own body was conspiring against your will? Have you noticed that even with a firm decision, your breathing changes, your skin reacts, and an inner warmth begins to invade you, as if it were impossible? Resistance is the most neglected battleground between mind and body. Carl understood the psyche as something inseparable from matter. The mind is not a pilot at the helm of a ship. It is the ship, and if you desire that mind, you must train your body not to deny it, but to guide it. For it is in the body that sexual energy is born, but it can also be transmuted. The first thing to understand is that desire is above all a vital energy. It is neither impure nor evil. It is pure, unadulterated power. It is strength, who builds temples, who moves civilizations, who builds empires, and who destroys people. What makes the difference is the direction. Think of a sleeping serpent. Deep in your spine there is this coiled energy that the ancients called Kundalini, the latent power of creation in most people. This serpent never awakens, or if it does awaken, it is cast down into cycles of lust and guilt. And Jung knew that the real revolution begins when this energy is recognized, controlled and increased. But the way to increase this energy is not through repression nor through brute force, but through conscious channeling. Sexual transmutation is about tapping into that primal energy, the desire that holds you back, and letting it rise from instinct to heart, from heart to mind, and from intellect to soul. However, it requires practice, physical discipline, emotional clarity, and most importantly, respect for your body as a temple. Have you ever noticed how your body reacts to your mind? When you dwell on carnal thoughts, your body heats up. But when you dwell on gratitude, presence, and purpose, your chest calms and your breathing opens. Stretch your spine, align yourself. This is the basis of transmutation, of total body presence. Begin to perceive your body in moments of temptation instead of fleeing. Stay with it. Feel what moves within you. Observe, breathe. Change the focus from excitement to breathing, from desire to posture of tension to expansion. You are not an animal at the mercy of instinct. You are a sacred warrior, and your body is your sword, and this is where the secret comes into play that few speak of. The body must express itself. If you repress desire without redirecting it, it becomes fear. But when you transform it into movement, training, writing, creating, and prayer, it becomes strength. There is no transformation without action, no ascension without conscious breathing, no inner strength without a body that channels the spirit. Therefore, create rituals. Rise in the morning as if you were waking a warrior. Take a bath as if you were purifying an altar. Train your body as if you were sharpening a sword, and walk each day as if you were carrying an inextinguishable flame. Jung said that the unconscious is transformed only when brought to consciousness and experienced in the body. That is, without action, there is no integration. You have already understood the power of desire. You have already faced your shadow. You have already seen that a greater power awaits you. Now is the time to be a channel, not a receiver. This change occurs in the body, in gestures, in daily life. There is no enlightenment without embodiment. There is no mastery without breath. The desexualized mind is not cold. It is ardent but oriented. It does not flee from desire. It transforms it into a shield, into sacred fire. With a fixed gaze, the body, once a battlefield altar, and on this altar you dedicate your energy. You don't waste it, you dedicate it, and thus you begin to control not only your desires, but also yourself. You have come this far and perhaps feel something strange, not euphoria or pride, but peace. Because anyone who has crossed the desert of impulses knows that true freedom does not scream. It silences the desexualized mind. It is not an extinguished mind or a moralizing ideal. It is the highest state of inner sovereignty that a person can achieve. It is when you realize that the whole world, it can be empowering, but nothing penetrates your strength. It's when your gaze no longer turns toward easy pleasure. It's when you desire yes, but you decide. You feel, but you don't give in to blind impulses. And that, my friend, is spiritual power. Jung once said that the encounter with the selfie is the most terrifying moment of all, because at that moment, there are no more excuses. No one is to blame. You understand that everything the world uses to control, you will only invade you if you allow it. That's the key. The desexualized mind is the mind that has regained its powers. The reins of your temple rest not on reactions, but on intention. They are guided not by the need to prove your masculinity, but by the silent presence of mastery. Today's world was built to keep you in a constant state of arousal. Endless scrolling, perfect bodies, narratives that feed the ego and stifle the mind. And what happens when a man decides to stop? He abandons the womb. There is no more easy dopamine, no more compensatory distraction. Just you, your breath, your purpose, and the immensity of your inner calm. And fear arises because in this silence you discover the truth. For years you have feared your own strength. You have been conditioned to believe that desire is a weakness, but in reality, desire is pure power. And once transmuted, it transforms into a magnetism capable of moving mountains. People begin to perceive something different in you. Your appearance changes. Your gaze becomes firmer. You become trustworthy, not because you speak well, but because you transmit an exceptional energy, that of someone who has surpassed themselves, despite the world's efforts. Don't worry, because deep down, every man knows that true masculinity lies not in conquering a woman's body, but in mastering her soul. You no longer have anything to prove. You no longer need to be accepted. You no longer need to be desired. Because now you are centered. You are creative. You are the source. The desexualized mind creates, focuses, builds, attracts, but does not hold back. It touches the world without being touched by its temptations, and that is freedom, the only true freedom. Carl Jung spoke of individuation as the supreme mission, to become what one was born to be, but it requires sacrifice. It requires giving up immediate pleasure to accept the pain of transformation. And that is what you do. You become what few have the courage to be, a complete man with a fiery sexual energy, with a free spirit and a reintegrated soul. Perhaps no one applauds you, perhaps no one understands you, but in the silence something in the universe reacts, because every time a man conquers himself, the world around him reorganizes itself. You are the revolution, you are the temple, you are the warrior and the priest of your own destiny. Never forget your pleasure is worth nothing more than your mission. Your freedom is worth more than any orgasm. And your sexual energy, when channeled, is the creative force that rebuilds not only your life, but your entire lineage. Now that you know what you will do with this power, if this video touched you, you are now part of our community on the channel. Each video is an open door for those seeking more than just answers. Share in the comments what this content awakened in you, how you managed your inner energy. Your experience can be a source of inspiration. If you're just starting out and haven't yet seen our other videos on Jung sexual energy and transmutation, explore our channel. A universe awaits you. Subscribe, comment, share, and keep exploring. The road is long, but you are not alone.